We're going to get to Carpe Diem calling in from Colorado. Sorry, Carpe Diem, had to put you on mute for a second there. You are officially on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
That's all right, man. You got to take those patrons.
That's right.
So when I was younger, my first marriage, I kind of avoided having kids because my wife at the time didn't want kids. And then one thing led to the other. We ended up divorcing, and now I'm happily married again. I'm going on to our 6th year, and we haven't had kids so far either. It just kind of one thing happened, just didn't really happen. But I had cancer about 7 years ago, and at the time, I don't know why I did that, but I did a vasectomy because I just I'm not going to pass on these bad genes that I have, and because it is a lethal mutation that I was born with. But anyways, recently my wife and I have been starting to talk about having kids and the potential of reversing my vasectomy. But I've kind of find myself in this philosophical position where I believe that it's wrong to have kids. And this is a recent development for me. Before it was different reasons. Now it's kind of like being a vegan, right? Where you were talking about earlier. I just think about the morality of bringing a kid into the world. And I have many different reasons for it. And I just kind of wonder what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I've talked about this on the show. I'm broadly anti-natalist myself. I wouldn't personally want to bring kids of myself into the world for the reasons that you're kind of talking about. We already have so many resources on this earth, and time being one of them. And of course, my own genetics is something I have to worry about with my own offspring too. And the way I think about it is, well, there are kids in the system right now that are being taken care of in foster situations that don't need to be. And I can help with that. If I decide I really want to take care of somebody, there's no good reason for me to say it has to be a kid that came from me, other than really selfish ones at the end of the day, at least how I see it. I think that more people should be adopting, and I would consider it strongly for myself. If once I'm, not in my 20s maybe, and have a stable enough life where I can do that for a kid. And, I guess that's my first question to you. And I want to know Bryce's take on this as well, but have you guys actually considered adopting as a potential solution?
So it's kind of like a tough conversation. We actually did a whole, courses to get this is a year and a half ago, to get into the foster system and be foster parents. And then we started getting calls about kids. And then every single time my wife just would not pull the trigger. And eventually we sat down and talked about what's happening. Why aren't you saying yes? And then she says, well, I don't really want to do a fostering thing. I might want to do an adopting thing. But now she's talking about maybe when I'm having a baby. And so it just seems like I know it's a conversation I have to have with her, right? Because it seems like the needle keeps moving. But for me, the needle doesn't move. It's not even just environmental thing, or like a vegan would more of a vegan kind of thing. And I'm mostly vegan too. I only eat the eggs of my chickens, and only because they do not like to eat them. So I have them, but I try to even stop that. But I do look at not just the environmental impact and all of that stuff, but in the fact that there are kids, but just the suffering, right? That it's
absolutely
it's hard to be alive, and perhaps, and I just don't find any convincing arguments against it. And I'll love to hear from the co-host as well too, where he is on that. But
because you asked us both, and I went straight to asking you questions.
I don't know.
I want to hear from Bryce real quick.
Either.
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead, Bryce.
Yeah, well, I guess the question that I would have, Dan kind of asked it, and you answered about your wife's position, saying that she was kind of wishy-washy on the issue, but I don't know that we got a clear answer from you. How would you feel about adoption? Would that be something that you would be personally open to?
Definitely. I'm totally on board with that. And I'm a teacher, and I can't wait to be responsible for a young human being, as crazy as it sounds.
Okay, so
do so much better than my parents did.
Right. Yeah. So from my perspective, just based on what you've said, it sounds like you guys could possibly come to some sort of middle ground. You seem to be okay with the prospect of adoption. She suggested that she could be, kind of backed away from it. Doesn't seem sure. There's a middle ground there somewhere. Clearly, both of you are at a period of your life where you have expressed an interest in raising a kid. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have one on your own, but it may be a good enough start to recognize that you're both can open to the possibility of adoption, and to just start exploring that possibility more than the physical reversing vasectomies and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the thing for me is it costs money to reverse a vasectomy, and it also costs money to do an adoption, right? So to me, it's like the same.
Yeah,
the same difference,
I didn't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the last thought I had is like, I guess it's because my reasons are very kind of like academic and philosophic, and my wife is not like that, right? She's a very pragmatic, down to earth kind of person that just lives day by day, which I really admire, but I can't really convince her on the same grounds as mine, right? She's not going to be convinced by my logic of philosophy of suffering and environmental things and stuff like that. And what I worried about is that she went from let's do foster to no, I want to adopt, and now saying we should reverse the vasectomy. And I just kind of worry that, if I make her not do this and then just adopt, it's like 20 years from now, she'll like resent me that I forced her to not have a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know what? At the same time, though, I'll say this, Carpe Diem. If you had a kid and you didn't want to, you're betraying your own values as well. So if there's going to be a sacrifice that's going to be made there either way, and it doesn't make sense for one of you to sacrifice the thing that you want just to make the other person happy, because that's not going to make both of you happy. Right. I'm with you in that. I had a partner previously that, I tried to explain this to them, and they seemed okay with the adopting thing, but they also, expressed a want to go through the pregnancy process and have a child themselves. And I totally understand that desire. Of course, like I can't conceive of it myself, as someone who doesn't have the ability to be pregnant really. That's something that I can't relate to, but I can relate to the idea of, wanting an offspring that you can take care of, that you call yours and stuff. Like I totally get that. But at the same time, I'm still compelled, probably like you, on these philosophical grounds of wanting to prevent suffering as much as I can. And I think that bringing another life into the world and would be contributing to that, when I can take away the suffering of somebody who's already in the world who could use my help. So, unfortunately, like I said, like if you decide that you want to go and do it because your wife wants to, I mean, that's your choice, but I don't know if you'd be happy with it, because I don't think I would if I came to that, compromise. But maybe there is more options. Maybe babysitting some more kids and seeing what that's like. And maybe, some people, they say that they really want it, and then they have the experience with raising a kid for a bit and realize it's not really for them. I don't know. But I think maybe there's room for more conversation, because don't reverse this vasectomy just because somebody else wants you to and you don't feel comfortable with it, because I can't support that.
Hey, Carpe Diem, can I ask you?
I have one last question that's more philosophic. That's actually challenging antinatalism.
Okay.
That comes from my wife. She actually said, what would happen if, I get it, the world is full of suffering, right? But if we admit that and just leave it alone, we'll never potentially get to a place where it might not be like that. Perhaps we can get to a non-scarcity society. Perhaps we can get to a place where we can living to be 300 years old and everybody lives healthy, or even crazier ideas like synergy and, full automation and all of that kind of sci-fi stuff. So she says, like, you don't know if that's possible. So if you prevent us from getting there, by just not having kids, of course, my counter argument is adoption, of course, but do you think that is a valid argument against the whole antinatalism thing, that we are kind of looking at the odds wrong because we don't know what the potential of the future could be better than now?
Did you say that this was your wife who presented this argument to you?
Yeah, as pragmatic as she is, she's talked about that. You don't know the future, she says. It could be better, right? And so, you know what I'm saying?
that's based on a hypothetical speculation that, I don't think it's like, you could say that about a lot of things. I could say, I could murder Bryce today because, we could have the technology to bring people back from the dead in the future, like, yeah, like maybe, but like that doesn't acknowledge the reality of the situation now. The thing is, there's a kid suffering in a home right now that could be better served in a family that could care for them. That's happening right now, and that's something that people can do about it right now. And so, yeah, like maybe in the future we could be doing all this other stuff, but like, what about the problems that we can fix now? That's how I think about it.
Thank you so much. That's good.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just have one final piece of advice, because when you told me that this is an argument that your wife made to you, that suggests to me that she has some serious thoughts about actually having a kid. And so I would suggest that otherwise she wouldn't have brought that argument up to you at all, So it sounds like she has definitely given this thought. My advice to you would be to have a serious conversation with her about how important this is to her, because if she is dead set on having a kid, you're right. If you don't actually have a kid physically with her, it could be something that she would regret in the future. And if you are forced to, or if you compromise your own values to satisfy her, you could regret that from in the future as well. Yep. You need to have a conversation and figure out whether this is a deal breaker or not, or if she would be willing to bend to that middle ground, because it sounds like she's leaning more towards she really wants to have a kid. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate the advice you guys gave. I know you guys have other callers, but I thank you for, you guys gave me a lot of good stuff here. And I also would like to say, like, I always feel like she's kind of hitting, I know it's kind of like, it sounds sexist, but it feels like she's hitting that kind of like moment in her life that she looks around and all her friends are having babies, and then she's feeling like the urge to have babies. You know what I'm trying to say? I've heard about this academically. I don't know if it's true, but sometimes I wonder if it's just not like a moment she's going through.
Do you mind if I ask how old she is?
6 years, and then she's 30. So
okay,
and so I don't know. It could be a hormonal thing, but whatever the reason is, I agree with you guys. I have to have a serious conversation with her and take it from there.
I can't speculate as to that. I don't know how that's something that goes around and is heard about, but to say in this moment, oh yes, this is just a decision based on hormone, like that sounds, that just, there's no good way to say that. And I don't know. I don't want to infantilize or look down upon someone's argument just because we're saying, oh, you're being irrational, because that obviously there's roots to that in our culture that we really want to get rid of. But I understand what you're saying, though. Like I don't want to I'm not saying that this is where you're coming from either, Carpe Diem, but you got to understand, like, I can't make that speculation at all just from where I'm sitting. All I'll say is,
I agree. That's I preface by saying that I don't think it doesn't matter to me what the reason is. Yeah. If she feels that way, we got to talk about it, Yeah.
If she feels that way, and maybe she feels like that's why, that's one way to do it. But all I can comment on is the actual arguments for whether to do this or not. And I think obviously I agree with you. There's a case to be made to choose to foster, to choose to adopt. But again, as to work long-term in a partnership, that's something that's a conversation you just have to have with her. But I hope we gave you some good advice. I hope this was helpful for you, and good luck when you have those conversations.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Oh, and Colin dropped in the middle of him saying thank you. But yeah, thanks for calling, Carpe Diem. Yeah, it's tough. I had this same thing figuring out my values with, again, like a previous partner that I had, and it's when you have that big conflict of interest, like it's hard to navigate that. Some people will change through it, some people don't. And I've never been like married long term, and I don't know what that experience is like to try to do that work. So I don't know.
Tell you.
Yeah.
No, marriage is a compromise. Marriage is a give and take, all of that. But at the end of the day, people have principles that they're not willing to bend on, or they realize that if they do bend on this, it's something that they may regret, you know. And if you are married to someone who has fundamentally different principles than you, the earlier you find that out in the marriage, the better. It may be something that could be worked through. There may be a compromise possible, but the longer you let it go, the more difficult it becomes. And either one of them I could see could potentially be sacrificing their principles just to kind of appease the other person. And that could be disastrous, you know. The argument as far as, you know, well, maybe she's a woman, it's just hormones or something. It not only is it sexist, but it's also very simplistic as well. We don't really have the ability to know what's going on. And one, you and I have never even met her or had a conversation with her. We couldn't even psychoanalyze that at all.
Right.
Exactly. It could just be that she's 30 years old now, kind of like he said, all of her friends, you know, that's kind of the age where people start taking life seriously, you know. It's different for women than for men, you know.
Absolutely.
Their biological clock is limited in time, and so she could be at that stage of life, but at the end of the day, it's a conversation, it's a deeper conversation that they need to have, figure out. I would say that he probably should figure out if she is willing to seriously consider adoption. It sounds like she wants to have a baby, otherwise she wouldn't have produced that argument that we just say. So
and I think it sounds like she's already changed her mind at least a couple of times during this whole process. So there's a chance she could change her mind again, and maybe they could find some sort of compromise. But you know, at the end of the day, I agree with you. You don't want to forsake your values to make another partner happy, because that's just a partnership that is built in misery, you know. So gotta work that out somehow.